the famous one is the Gallup poll. Like 70% of U.S. workers are disengaged at work and unhappy. That's the one that everybody cites. But this study was around the comparison issue. Like if we stopped comparing our careers and our houses and everything else, we'd actually most of us would be happy. But that's that the comparison trap is a real problem, I think. And I try not to do that, but I mean I'm human, so I do it too.
And so I'm going to edit this. Um, and still trying to see, like, again, it'll start with like a snippet of some knowledge bombs on you. Then I'll do my intro on you. But yeah, I think, and if do you have a hard stop at 5 or?
It's more like a soft stop, so my children and family don't leave me. So a few minutes after.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just always good to keep in mind.
Yeah.
People's
Let's shoot
time.
for that. I can go a little over though.
Sweet. Cool. Well, we'll just kind of get started. But yeah, Matt, tell me a little bit about where you're at, what you do. Give us your quick bio.
Yeah. So I am a classic COVID layoff. It's what got me into what I'm doing today. So I was kind of pushed into quote unquote entrepreneurship. I think that's probably a little bit of a misleading term, entrepreneur, but I started my own company in April. And by started my own company, I created a website and bought an LLC, and then just started calling all my friends and former colleagues and folks that might need some HR help. And from there, Same Page was born. And now I've got a team of 2 working for me. So that's the very quick version. Left a job in December of 2019, started a new job in January of 2020, lost that job in April, started this business, and it's been a whirlwind ever since.
Yeah. Well, which is, I think we got a lot that we can cover, a lot of wisdom that I know and inevitably you'll drop on us because you just can't help yourself. You're a mentor to a lot of people, and that is the God's honest truth. I know myself included, a lot of people look up to you for wisdom, guidance, and so I think just knowing your background, and then this is us catching up for the first time in a bit. You've gone through some stuff and worked with a lot of cool companies as well. So, we first connected with King of Pops, but I know even your introduction into the startup food business, Gourmet Popsicles, was kind of an interesting story too. So, give us a little bit of
Yeah,
background on how you ended up in this food business.
sure. And first of all, Paul, as I'm doing whatever the heck this is that I'm doing, I learned a lot from watching you over the last couple years since you left King of Pops and have gone off and done your own thing. So the wisdom, if there is any, flows both ways, my friend. But yeah, going back to how I got made my way to King of Pops, I guess that was now, gosh, 9 years ago, maybe 9 or 10, which is kind of crazy. But I was my first career out of, if you can call it that, after college. I was working for just a giant 15,000 person company, and it was just soul sucking and everything you would see in office space, like just cubicles. And I kind of hated it, but I somehow ended up doing it for 6 or 7 years. And towards the end of that run, I was doing what's called Six Sigma process. I was a Six Sigma black belt, which like sounds really cool, but it's actually not that exciting. I was just going around to different business units and telling them how to fix stuff. I wasn't actually doing anything. I was just telling people how to do stuff. And uh, as part of that job, though, I got to do some training, and I really liked that. And so I thought maybe I'll just go do training and development. And so I went back to school and got a master's degree in HR and organizational development. And I thought I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go be a learning and development expert. And at that time, I had some friends that were starting this popsicle business, and I went to them with this grand plan of all these things I could do, and had this big PowerPoint. I'll never forget it. It was like on an iPad. Went out to dinner with Nick, co-founder at King of Pops, and gave him this grand pitch of all these things I could do. And he was like, "Can you just come sell catering popsicles?" And I said, "Sure." So I uh, was losing that job because this is a theme in my career. Like this business was closing, so I uh, that job was liquidated out. The whole company closed. And so I left from that and had this degree, and I went and sold popsicles. So my parents and everyone were very concerned, like, what are you doing with your life? But it was a great decision, and I was there for 7 years and ended up by the end of that run actually doing all the things that I thought I wanted to do, running what we call people operations or HR, running all the training and development. So it went from selling popsicles and driving them around town to managing. At the end there, I think we had a couple hundred people on some of the payrolls I ran. So that was how I got into that. But it's a common theme in my story is like I didn't have, I'm a risk averse person. So the better story there would be like, I quit my job and started a popsicle company, or I quit my job and joined this one, but I was kind of forced into it because that company closed. And so I think that's the takeaway there for me is like, I'm not a big risk taker. I just kind of get pushed into these things, and sometimes they work out.
Gotcha. And maybe I've been using risk averse incorrectly this whole time.
Maybe I just misspoke. I am risk averse. I don't. I avoid risk.
Yeah,
I avoid risk mostly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because and what I'm just so fascinated by, you know, and it's the theme of this podcast, and why you were. I'm like, I need to holler at Matt, not just because I was like, I want to catch up with this dude, but just the whole concept of like kind of starting over, or like, you know, life going in cycles, and it's easy to apply to just the business world or look at it in a vacuum, but what goes on in your career and professional life has a massive impact on how you see yourself personally and your personal relationships. So knowing that, you know, forced into this other thing where you're like, well, I didn't know, I came here wanting to do XYZ, and you want me driving around selling pops, you know, to your next move, which was at MailChimp.
Mhm.
And then from MailChimp to a startup and then that startup was when the big Rona hit.
Yeah.
So, you know, thinking back at kind of, and there's a lot of other stuff I, you know, want to definitely like go into more detail on, but, you know, just that whole mental game, because what I always like to demystify is like what, you know, if anyone that knows someone that's like, here's a very confident person that's successful and is just always, you know, turning up good. Well, you know, from the outside looking in, it's like, man, well, of course, in my mind, I'm like, well, of course, Tanner ends up in somewhere where great. But what I don't see is any kind of, you know, struggle, battle, like difficulty, and that's where I think a lot of lessons can be gleaned from. Because I'm sure you would be saying like, Paul, like, yeah, this shit ain't easy. But for a lot of people who, you know, who don't know that full story, might be like, well, again, of course, Matt ends up in great places.
Well, I think there's this. It's like the survivorship fallacy, right? I think that's the one that's out there that a lot of people, and I don't even know if you can call what I'm doing this grand success, but to whatever degree you want to call this success, you look at anybody that's successful, and there's, as I understand this fallacy, it's you think, okay, well that person's successful, so let me backtrack the steps they did, and I'll be successful. But you're missing out on the thousands of others that did the exact same thing and didn't hit. So, you know, you look at a successful writer or a successful founder, and you're missing on all the people that it's, you know, you just, if all you're doing is studying that, it's you're missing out. But for me, it's like, yeah, this I look at the whatever the quote unquote success that I've had, and there was some just I'm very fortunate, like very privileged. So the hard times for me are not that hard, but they're just the 7 years at a boring sucking company. That was kind of my pit where I'm like, this is I don't see a way out of this. Like I think this is how jobs are. I remember leaving college, getting that first job where it's like you have to be there 9 to 5, and I'm like, oh my god, this is what work is like. I guess I do this for 40 years. That was miserable. And then when I lost that job, I was like, okay, well, now I can just try something else. It was kind of like forced me into that. So if I do have one skill, it's just having that faith and positivity that something good will come out of those types of situations, like losing a job or you know, my entire company closing. I think That's one thing that I can lean on. But yeah, I mean, there's for anybody who's had any success, they've most likely had some challenges along the way, or they're lying, I would say.
Yeah. And quick sidebar, the getting a lot of like poofs in the mic. I don't know if like
Oh, sorry. How about now?
that sounds better. It was like it was like coming up in some aspects, but then
I
a
think it's
lot of
because I.
times not.
All right. I think it's because this thing's moving. How about that? I'll try to.
Yeah, no,
Is
that's
it doing? Okay. Just let me know if it does it again. I can change.
okay. Cool, no worries. And this is getting edited out.
No,
So,
that's all good.
um, no, for sure, because yeah, I would you call it survivorship bias, right?
I could be misstating it, but as I think that's what it's called. Yeah, I think there's some research, if you will, out there around this thing that we just tend to try to retrace steps of only the folks that have made it. You see it a lot in like this thought leadership space, like some folks that I actually really think provide some benefit, but like you look at a Tim Ferriss or somebody like that, and you just think, well, if I just do that, I'll end up where he did. And there's thousands of others that tried that and didn't work. So there's some luck, there's situation, there's time, there's all these other things that go into it. And you know, I think that's what's at play there when you fail to understand that.
Yeah, because it's not like, oh, I made this decision or this happened, I made this decision, and then here's the outcome. There's millions of miniature decisions that you make throughout your days and weeks that can lead you there. And that's tough to talk about because it's not like, yeah, I made the decision to send those emails, call my network, and do the things that push you into that direction. Because at any step of the way that you can kind of fumble that because the story that I had heard early on that really messed me up was like, oh yeah, I had this idea, started the business, it was really tough, and then now I'm successful. It's like, and that's kind of like where this whole thing comes from. It's like I want to know about those 2 years when things weren't going well, because if you only look at it that way, it's like people are going to look at themselves and think, well, why am I not getting that? This absolutely sucks.
Yeah.
It should be better. I should be like Tim Ferriss, but that whole comparison game is always a recipe for suffering.
Yeah.
Um, it's not worthwhile.
Yeah, and I mean, what's the I heard this somewhere recently. It was whatever success is. It's like the quickest way to find success is to lower or adjust your definition of success. So you can that's a very like Zen way of thinking about it. But like you can be successful in the next 2 minutes if you just adjust your definition of success to be whatever you are right now. So, I'm sitting here in my basement on this call with you, and I can look at my business, and I would like for it to be more successful. We all would, but I can also be like, I mean, I'm sitting here like I'm privileged enough to be able to just take an hour of my day to do this. I mean, that's success. Like to a lot of like that is a definition of success for some people. Not everybody can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. Maybe that's a little woo for some people, but I do think not necessarily lowering your expectations, but just adjusting. Like, what are you looking for? Like, are you trying to be? I mean, I'm able to pay bills and do things like this. Like, I'm not. This isn't going public tomorrow. I'm not going to be the
Yeah,
next. I'm not going to be Elon Musk, but this is successful.
yeah. And I don't think because there could be some wisdom like, oh, don't lower your standards, whatever. But to your point, it's like, well, what is success? And that is, you define that. And when you're looking out externally, well, you're not going to reach it because you could follow the identical path of Elon Musk, Tim Ferriss, whoever, and fail miserably. Be like, I literally did everything they said to do. And what makes it even tougher is you'll do stuff, and then people selling you stuff, which I know being in the marketing world, they're going to be like, this method and way of thinking is dumb. To get to where you want to get to, do not do that. Do what I tell you to do. And
mm-hmm.
then those people are saying, don't do what those folks are doing. And there's just a lot of paths to getting to the same outcome. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's just the biggest mind fuck when you
Mm-hmm.
are doing something on your own because you're blazing a new path.
Yeah, and I think I'm forgetting the name of this study. I'll send it to you. But it was I was doing some work, some career coaching work, and helping clients figure out what they wanted to do with their career. And like you can go cite any poll you want. The famous one is the Gallup poll. Like 70% of U.S. workers are disengaged at work and unhappy. That's the one that everybody cites. But this study was around the comparison issue. Like if we stopped comparing our careers and our houses and everything else, we'd actually most of us would be happy. I mean, life is better now than it ever has been, but we're more miserable because it's easier to compare. And I'm not going off on like a social media rant. Like I'm not smart enough to really know the pros and cons of that. I haven't really studied that, but like there's just so much research on you're happy if you're just like a little bit better than your closest peers. You don't have to be um, as long as you can do that, most people find some satisfaction, which is like such a weird and backwards way to think about life. But that's um, that the comparison trap is a real problem, I think. And I try not to do that, but I mean I'm human, so I do it too.
Yeah, it's an easy trap to fall into, because
Yeah,
if you're seeing people that are advancing more than you are, it can make you feel like you're in a way. But in the end, if you're focused on where you're trying to get to, people, you can be happy at any stage. And that's what's fascinating about kind of my second go around at this whole thing. I'm much more enjoying the process. I'm like, I don't need to suffer
hmm
to get there. And I think, and actually, like, I don't listen to a ton of Gary Vee. I like his stuff, and I do like his style. I can only take but so much of his content. But he's like, I think he was like, what's the deal with this whole hustle and grind culture?
yeah,
He's like, you don't need to be just grinding at 24/7 and every day hustling. Um, for a lot of people that works, but for a lot of people that, yeah, you
yeah.
suffer needlessly.
Well, first of all, Gary's not going to come in your podcast now because you just talk shit about him. But
Maybe he will because I talk shit,
fair,
Gary.
fair enough. But I read this. Do you know the Rad Reads guy? His name's
Yeah.
K High. He's a former like BlackRock consultant, I think, and he started his own kind of blogging empire. But he writes good stuff, and he had a post that really stuck out in my head around defining success. And he sits down and He wrote down like as he was building this business of his, what does success look like? And he had like 5 or 6 bullet points. And one of them was he wanted to be able to go surf every day, which, that's great. I don't have that goal, but for him, that was one of his 5 things. Like he wanted to be able to surf every day. And that meant a couple things. It meant like a job that he wasn't traveling. He had to make sure he could afford a house near a place where you could surf. And so once he got those things, there's a couple other things on there, like, I think he had one like he wanted to be able to buy cool sneakers. He wanted to be able to spend more time with his family. Um, things like that. He had 5 or 6 bullet points, and so he had this reminder when he's having a day where like his business isn't doing as good as he wants, or he sees somebody else making millions of dollars, or all these people in his network that were still consultants at this job that he left where they were making all this money. He could say, you know what, I went surfing today at 2 o'clock because my schedule permitted it. Like he defined it, and that helped him remember. Oh yeah, I am successful. I forgot. So it sounds so obvious, but step one is like defining what does success even mean for you. Um, and that always stuck in my head. I was like, that's a good exercise that we don't do. Um,
Hmm.
most of us don't do.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna do that. I mean, put it down. There's been some exercise I've done, like the perfect day exercise was monumental,
Mhm.
and it's similar. It's like, what would you do if money was no object, but this day you had to live every day?
Yeah.
What is most important? And it was this very famous internet marketer, Frank Kern. I mean, he talked about it. He's by no means like created it, but he's like, because you can only drive but so many cars, you can only like do but so much in the material world. He's like, so you can have those material things in that perfect day, but what would you experience and all that? And especially as a guy like who doesn't often like talk about emotions, it's like, no, I realized like, man, what are the major themes here? And it was like, I wanted to feel connected to what I'm doing and who I'm with.
Yeah.
I had a few other themes in there. I was like, oh damn, these are like recurring themes.
Yeah.
And that helped, focus. I'm like, well, if I do those things, I'm happy. That is like that's my end goal. If
And it
I
goes,
can be in
yeah,
business and be happy.
and it goes both ways. Like this is not a rant like, oh, the simple thing, the best things in life are free. I'm not. I don't think that's the takeaway here. If success for you is being able to drive like the newest Tesla or whatever, pick some expensive thing, then as long as that's really your definition, when you're sitting there grinding or hustling or whatever at some job 70 hours a week, that's still a conscious choice where you're like, okay, I am doing this because success for me is XYZ. Like, I mean, so I don't want anybody to think like takeaway here is like, oh, just we need less stuff, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's both ways. Just be clear on what you want. There's no shame in either way. Just if you don't define it, you're just never going to stop, and that's just
Exactly.
that's a trap.
Yeah, and and I love talking to stuff. I'm like trying to think like, man, how would I even get on like the topic success? But we could keep going. I am curious though on, you go into MailChimp like
Yeah.
a company that's just crushing it.
Hmm.
Um, you were doing kind of like a lot of what you had set out to do years before, and what you ended up doing at King of Pops of training and staff development, right? And you were there for a few years. What I'm curious about is a little bit of that experience, go into the startup, and then suddenly it's like, oh, I left this awesome MailChimp company for a startup that I'm sure was equally awesome, but then
Yeah.
didn't work out.
Yeah. For me, so Mailchimp was at the end of my King of Pops run. I knew I kind of hit the end of you just kind of know when it's time. I think Seth Godin says like the time to quit a job is 2 years before you think it's time to quit a job, or I'm probably butchering that quote, but it's something like that. So I'd probably was was 1 or 2 years past when I should have kind of pushed myself to leave. But anyway, I knew it was time, and was in Atlanta. Mailchimp is always known as like this incredible place to work in Atlanta and just and the U.S. and uh, incredible company. And so that was my kind of off ramp into tech and just that kind of culture. And I loved it. But what I found was when I got there, Mailchimp had just been named Inc.'s Company of the Year. Um, and it was in year like 17. So it took their whole thing. They never took outside investor money. It's, uh, you know, uh, still founder led, but it was in year 17 when I got there. And so it had it was harder to quote unquote like make a mark there. It was around 1,000 employees. I mean, incredible culture. Like if you incredible benefits and just a great place to work. But I kind of treated it. I don't know if this is. I didn't do this intentionally, but looking back on it, it was kind of like going off to college or something where I was getting more out of that than they were getting out of me. Like I was soaking up what it's like to work in a place like that. I was working with some incredible people, and I'm sure I provided some value, but it was just so big. It was harder for me to really provide value. I wasn't. Maybe this is a personal issue, but I think it was hard to do, and so that's great for a while to kind of soak up benefits, free food, great coworkers, learning all kinds of stuff. But eventually, as a human, you want to contribute a little more. And it's not just about like the next title or the next promotion. I just actually wanted to contribute more than I was contributing. And again, that's probably equal parts on me and on MailChimp. This is not to disparage them in any way. But I was ready to go to a place that was a little smaller so that I could contribute a little more directly. And that was what led me to Full Story. And it's, as advertised, incredible place, love the people. But then COVID hit, and we had mass layoffs. I'm still in touch with a lot of them. They've sent me clients, so it's all good. But that was why I made that move.
Which, yeah, and I feel like it's two major changes in such a short time for you. I mean, going to Full Story, and then now, your own business of Same Page.
Well, it's a great point. That's why I'm doing my own business, because I had gone. For anybody out there that, and you've gone through some of this, like trying to land a new job, like to get a new job, the traditional route, going from Mailchimp to Full Story was like a 3 month or more, three to 6 month process of networking, coffee, and sending resumes, and it's just an exhausting process. I mean, it's cliche, but it's true. Finding a job is a full-time job, so I'm juggling my job at MailChimp, trying to find a place where I want to go, spending a ton of effort and energy on that, and then getting that job, starting it in January, and then all the emotional work. It's fun work, but like getting to know a new company, and it's like, I mean, just getting to know everybody and getting to know that culture, and they're starting to feel like family. I just couldn't deal with the whiplash of like when I lost my job in April. I spent a few days just thinking through what am I going to do. My first instinct was to just polish up the resume and restart that process and go interview. Uh, but I just couldn't do it. Like I emotionally couldn't do it. I had just done it in 4 months prior, and I was like, I can't. I'm too exhausted to do this. So I, in a weird way, thought it would just be easier and less taxing to try my own thing for a while. So again, this was not like some, oh, I'm brave and going to start my own business or I'm fearless. I just was kind of too lazy to do the other way. Um, that's how I. So yeah, it was two big changes, but that's why because I couldn't do it again.
That's interesting, and I get that on the, that kind of feeling of momentum, and then getting derailed, and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, "Fuck!" Like I gotta do that again.
Yeah.
So starting the same page, and you're now at two. Are they full time or are they contractors, kind of part
Yeah, I've
time?
got two full-time folks on my team.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
So, and I don't even think we've really even mentioned yet. I mean, the assumption is you're doing HR development training, stuff that you've done before. But tell me,
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
what do you
so
offer?
what we've landed on is I named it Same Page intentionally because I thought that was pretty pivotable if we needed to. You could apply that to almost anything. We're just trying to get people on the same page. But what it is, uh, officially, it's Same Page HR, and we just are a fractional HR business. And what that means, that's a fancy way of saying we'll just come in and be your HR department if you don't have one. And so we typically target companies under 100 employees that have been handling all the HR stuff with like the office manager or the finance person or the founder. God forbid, that's usually the worst choice there. But like somebody's been doing it all, and they're not quite ready to hire anybody yet. And so we're like a turnkey uh, HR department, and you see that model a lot with like CFOs, like fractional CFO. I think you see it some with marketing as well, like fractional marketing, but I'm starting to see a bigger trend in all kinds of different disciplines, and so this isn't like a business model I thought of by any means, but we're doing that for HR, and it's been fun.
Yeah, and because I have heard much more on that on those other sides. I mean, especially in the marketing world of people that kind of like it's almost like I'm going to contract out
Hmm.
a little bit of my time to you, and you, and the risk for the contractor for the fractional person is like, well, sent full time. There's no like major guarantee, and depending on how your contract is, but most contracts, I mean, it'd be tough to get like, hey, I need a year guarantee. You
Yeah,
could get there, but then you get the company gets the benefit of like, well, I'm getting expert niche advice and experience from somebody who's been there, but I'm not paying full price for it.
yeah, and exactly that's the pitch to them is like you're getting all of our experience, but it's lower risk because you're not. I mean, when you hire an employee, there's all kinds of other costs that beyond the salary. Um, as you probably know, like all the payroll taxes and benefits and liability and such. So our contracts. I don't know if this is smart or not, but what we do is we do typically ask for like a 6 month or more, 6 months to a year agreement. But I give them just give me 7 days notice if you need to cancel. So I mean, what does that really mean? It means that they think they're committing to giving it a 6 month shot or a year, but like if things aren't working well, I want them to feel confident they can just be like, you know what, we're out. And so it's really just kind of like an agreement between two humans. Like it's not the contract is very easy to break for them. It gives them a comfort, but it gives me some planning comfort that and forecasting if they sign up for 6 months. So I don't know. There's probably some fractional folks that would tell me that's a stupid way to do it, but that's how we do it, and it's so far it's worked out. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, well, all those ways of like crafting that offer is like I mean, you can a lot of room to get creative because it's like, what is the offer, and then what are people actually going to do? You know, a lot of these like, you know, a lot of softwares that might offer like a $30 risk-free
Yeah.
thing. You know, try for 30 days, you get a full refund if you don't like it.
Yeah.
Most people don't even do that, even if they didn't have the best experience. So it's just, I mean,
Yeah, I
I
just look
deal
at
in
it
that.
like, I mean, it's we don't have, what am I going to do? Like if somebody signs a 1 year contract and we're doing a terrible job and they call me and tell me they want to cancel, like I'm not going to, what am I going to take them to court? Like I mean,
Yeah.
maybe if I was actually doing a good job, but I just figured might as well put it in the deal that you can just
Yeah. Yeah.
cancel anytime. So then one client asked me like, why am I signing a year agreement then? I'm like, well, you're just telling me what you expect so I can kind of plan for that. And then if things go bad, well, you tell me and we'll change it. But so I don't know, but that's how we do that. But I think the reason that we hit the timing in some ways has been really good. So I think the reason that like fractional CFO is more common, and you mentioned this with marketing, like contract out your marketing. I think with your books and your accounting, like yeah, I don't care, just someone else take it out. I'll contract it out. Marketing, whether I mean you know more than me if this is smart or not, but I think there's this idea like, you know what, I don't know anything about social media or digital marketing, just you handle it. But with HR, people I think historically have been a little more hesitant to bring in a fractional person. They're like, how can, if you're not really a part of the team, like how can you help us with people stuff? But what we've found is with the climate that we're all in Slack, we're all in Zoom meetings. I'm no different than their employees. And so this idea that I'm fractional, I mean, newsflash, most of your employees are probably working a fractional day as well. You just don't know it. And so
Yeah.
we're able to hop from meeting to meeting and Slack to Slack. And I mean, I've had clients tell me they feel like we're more of an employee than some of their employees. Like, so I think that this current climate we're in has really helped us. And I'm curious what that's going to look like in the coming years. But I think it's given rise to more of this fractional stuff. Is my prediction.
Yeah, and even things like, and like how fast it moves, like where people are like how do you operate on Slack if someone's like, why am I getting messages at 11 p.m.? You know, and I don't know, maybe that's something that's like in an employee handbook of like we are defining the expectation of Slack communication within it because it turns into. I feel like that's a major HR issue. Someone could be like, "What the fuck?" Like, you
Oh
know,
yeah, I mean you have to put some guardrails on those things. And Slack is a great tool, but it's like any tool, you can really misuse it. And I think that people just kind of turn it on and let it go. But it's helped us. I mean, for us, it's a context switching thing. Like we've got, my Slack has 6 or 7 clients at any one time. I'm switching between, and so just kind of keeping our head on a swivel with all that. But yeah, you've got to set guidelines on that stuff for sure.
well, and the other added benefit too of like, you know, you're learning from a lot of companies that you're working with. So it's like,
Yes.
well,
Yeah.
your knowledge and experience is like exponential growth of, and without giving away anything like, oh, here's a trade secret, which wouldn't be the thing. But it's like, hey, here's something that's working. I'm seeing. Let's try it here. And in that way, it's just helpful for
Absolutely.
all the
Yeah.
parties.
Absolutely. And our team, like Rachel and I were just chatting about this. Like, I don't know what the future holds for Same Page. I don't know if I'll be doing this for 30 years or 6 more months. I mean, I feel confident it'll be longer than 6 months. But uh, worst case, this is just like boot camp. What if I have to go and get a full time job, like director of people or head of people somewhere? Like I will have just like soaked up so much from all these companies. It's been invaluable. So it does feel very much like I'm. I mean, you're exactly right on that. Like there's economies of scale. Like some of the stuff we create, we're able to like use with all our clients. So we create it once and we can kind of tweak it and change it. That's there. But also just like what we're soaking up has been amazing. I didn't really plan on that going in. I should have been obvious, I guess, but that's been fun.
Yeah, it's a nice benefit. I mean, to
Yeah.
you and to the companies, I think this is part of what makes that relationship, you know, work so well. The whole fractional thing. I'm curious, like you know, you're doing the HR, and I'm trying to think of like if you were going into a company, like let's say it was not just you and to your employees. Let's say you were your ideal target market, a company 100 or less employees.
Mm-hmm.
And well, let's say tomorrow you are like in charge, maybe you're the CEO or you're the HR person. Like, what are the first things that you would do in there to be like, all right, here's how I'm going to take all the awesome things that I know and have experienced to, I don't know, do it. And I'm thinking vaguely, I'm like, what does HR even mean?
Yeah.
I'm thinking employee handbooks, but I know it's a lot more than that.
Well, so to back up, like HR, I mean, there's so much stigma. It's a terrible term. I just use it because people are like, okay, I need HR help. Uh, I find once we get into these clients that we help them with all kinds of different things. Almost all of our clients have us running their all hands meeting because we're good at that. We like doing it. We kind of MC it. I mean, we that's an example of something that we've done. I don't know that that's traditionally HR. We really like to view this as helping, not with everybody. I mean, but doing strategy, like helping them with business strategy. And so, my stance on this is to really just handle the people stuff and like what isn't people stuff. But when you're in a sales call with somebody, they want some concrete things like, okay, what are you going to do? Like, I mean, you seem like a nice enough guy, but like if I partner with you for X dollars a month, like what do you do? And so it's like, what would your HR department do? So we handle making sure you've got a handbook, and I don't mean like the old crappy legal docs, like just maybe it's a Notion page or a Google site. Like we'll make something that's actually useful. People know where to go find stuff. We'll work on that for you. Do you have any sort of like review process? Like I don't love a formal performance review, but like we'll figure something out there to make sure you're actually tracking that. The big one that comes up is like as companies are growing from 50 to 100 is like how do we promote people and what do we do with raises? Like how do we handle comp? Stuff like that. So those are the things that we handle, and there's all the little stuff like payroll and all that. But that's how we approach it. The first thing I would do to answer the other part of your question, and clients do sometimes do this, they're like, I don't know what I need. I just know that no one's helping with HR. You're now in charge of HR. Go. Um, First thing I do is like an employee engagement survey. Usually, I don't. If I was just joining, like I did at Full Story, I would kind of do a bunch of one-on-ones and soak up, figure out. I just listen. We need to move a little faster than that with these paying clients. So we typically do an engagement survey of some sort, just to see how do your people feel. Because I mean, some founders are better at this than others, but sometimes they're just way off on what they think the culture is, and people are just open with a quote unquote outside consultant. We find it works best when we get in early, we ask questions, they're comfortable, they open up to us because we're like an outsider, and then very quickly, if we do it right, we don't feel like an outsider anymore, but we've gotten some very honest feedback. That's how that typically goes. So start with some sort of feedback mechanism to figure out, and then from there it's just the possibilities are endless. Um, of the things that we would do to show our value. But that's been and I'm sure you've experienced some of this in your second or whatever number career this is for you. Your current go round in this career is like showing your value. There's a pressure as a fractional or a consultant or whatever that's a little different than when you're an employee. Like employees need to show their value, but I feel this immense pressure to send like weekly recaps and have we have Notion pages with like hubs for clients. Like there's this immense pressure to be like, here's what we're doing, show them that work. So I don't know if that answers, but that's how we approach it.
No, that definitely does. And I'm starting to see more because it is like, here are the concrete things that you can get a deliverable on. Run your payroll, figure out performance reviews, figure out how to do comps and bonuses and benefits and things like that. But I would guess like once you do these employee engagement surveys, that's going to unravel or reveal
Yeah.
some underlying issues that maybe the company's not about. It's like, hey, did you know that like a lot of your companies or a lot of your employees like are resentful to their manager, or maybe they feel like they could be doing more. Maybe they are seeking more professional development opportunities, you're just not giving them those. So once you find them, then you can help direct and steer, because it's almost, there's other things I think I'm like imagining that comes from it, but almost like you turn into like a director of culture, or help guide a culture or create one, when, as opposed to just letting it run by chance.
Yeah, if I mean, you have to be careful with that because sometimes it's like, you don't want to be the just ping pong tables and beanbag chairs kind of culture, but the very act of hiring uh, somebody to run HR or people ops or whatever you want to call it, the very act of committing that money and bringing us into the first all hands and introducing us, like you've already made a huge step to show your people like, okay, I care about this and I understand that you need somebody to go to ask how like FMLA leave works or like how you know how what this policy is. Like you're just committing to giving them a resource. I mean, it's so that's step one. But then yeah, you get in there and you just unravel all kinds of fun stuff. And so if you wanted somebody that's just going to help you with like payroll and staying legally compliant, you'd be better off just hiring like somebody that's got like some certification and can do that way more inexpensively than we can. But I would like to think that we provide a little more than just that. Like we're looking at some, we've got that experience of like running small businesses. So that's the idea anyway.
Mm-hmm. And is it revealing some of those like people issues or
Yeah,
um
yeah.
I don't know, because I want to get back to ping pong tables.
Yes, I know you
And
do.
what
I know you. You never loved my presentation back in the day about ping pong tables, but
I loved it. First of all, one just I got next time I see you, we'll play some ping pong. I'll probably win
yeah, that's for sure.
because that's like the one sport I'm dominant at. But that was a hot take you had, and I love a good hot take. So you had this presentation a while back of like, I think when it boiled down to it is a ping pong table is not a company culture. Is that
Yeah,
more or less your
and I want to be
thesis?
clear. Like I stole a lot of that idea from a very famous Netflix culture slide deck. And I think some of it has been debunked a little bit as apocryphal myths from some of what Netflix culture really was. But the big takeaway was, look, culture is not like cool looking offices and beanbag chairs and food. It's really great colleagues and people that are excited to work there. And I presented that at King of Pops, and people are like, "What's wrong with ping pong tables?" Nothing inherently is wrong with ping pong tables, but if that's what you think is, if you buy a ping pong table instead of committing to a people ops department, like that's a misstep. So that's all I meant. That's all I meant with
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
No shade on ping pong tables.
No, no. Well, and for a second I was like, oh, is this a Netflix documentary? But it's like, no, you actually read the pitch deck or something, right? Or
Yeah,
not
it's
pitch
it's
deck, but
it's gone around. I think it's still out there on SlideShare. It's a Reed Hoffman deck. It's great. You can go check it out. But
I'm sure not many people have read it.
oh, I think it's millions. But I really took that part to heart. But no, I think yeah, and it's similar to what we were talking about earlier. Like with what does success mean for you? Like there is no right their company culture. It's like, what do you want your company to be? So I'll ask founders. Like I was just helping a client with a parental leave policy, and she said, well, what do most companies do? I was like, well, there's some legal minimums that we have to do, but like, what do you want this place to be? Do you want it to be a place where people feel pressure to come back and work after having a child or after their partner has a child, or do you want it to be a place where you can take off tons of time? Like, and it's like we can talk about this openly right now because no one's going to know until we share it. But like, there is no really wrong. I mean, there's some moral stuff that you can get into, but like, just be intentional with that. I guess that's really the takeaway is like intentional culture and consistent is the key.
Yeah. Well, because I think a lot of cultures can turn sour, not even deliberately. It's just out of maybe maybe naive isn't the right word, but it's like, wait, I had all the right intentions and things are going to shit. Because if you don't know that answer of like, well, what's normal for parental leave? Like, I have no idea. Oh, well, here's the minimums and here's that. Okay, cool. Well, let's do a little bit above the minimum. Cool, we're doing more. And then the employees are like, what are you doing?
Well, yeah, and you're just
And
not
because
being
they've
direct. I mean, you're not
yeah,
being clear. Like if you said, "Hey, look, we do the bare minimum on parental leave," and you have that on your like, it's in your interview process. I mean, I don't think a company would be this bold, but like, so this is maybe an extreme example. But I think it would be refreshing if a company, I mean, I can see maybe like McKinsey or Boston Consulting Group doing this. I don't know what their leave policy is, but imagine a company in the interview process is like, hey, we do the bare minimum of leave. This is not a good place to come work if you are thinking about having kids, but this is a place that will absolutely turbocharge your career. Our clients are more important than your family. Imagine if they said that. You'd be like, well, I appreciate the honesty. Like,
Yeah.
just the worst is when you do the opposite of that, and you're like, oh no, we value family. We give you 12 weeks, and then in your second week, your boss is pinging you like, hey, I mean, I know you got 10 more weeks, but like this project's really blowing up. Like, just be upfront.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't, you know,
But
that's
and even just knowing it's like because it's almost like the market value, right? It's well, here's the minimum, but what are other businesses actually doing? So you can either then meet
yeah,
or exceed it. Because, like for example, if you're in an area, minimum wage is $8.
hmm
Okay, I could pay that, but then for my industry, what are most people paying? Okay, maybe they're paying $10. I'm going to pay now 14, so I can be above that average. But you wouldn't know that unless you had an expert to even to give those like layer of details of a comparison
yeah.
for things like parental leave.
Which is why, full story, for instance, in a lot of companies, they don't even they're in Atlanta, but they're like, we base our pay off of what Bay Area pay is because we want people from there. We want the best people. So I don't care. You know, we're not going to penalize you for moving from the Bay Area to Atlanta. Um, it's kind of an extreme example, but I think that's what they want to do. Um, so similar to what you're saying there.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, and a lot of that stuff, because again, you can when dealing with people who are very illogical, irrational, they can be logical, but you got to make sure you come correct because that seed of dissent or irritability or like I think or if a person spots someone being disingenuous, and I'm curious your take, I think that is a seed. It's the opposite of a seed. It's a seed of poison that can
hmm
poison that person, who then poisons other people, and suddenly your culture is just tanking for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, well, I think so. Disingenuous is interesting. I was listening to this is a big Seth Godin thing, but his thing is like we don't actually care about authenticity. Like authenticity is kind of a myth and it's overrated. What we want is consistency, and that is really what we mean by authenticity. So, you know, if you say one thing and do another, that's inconsistent. You're not being consistent. That's disingenuous as you're describing. So, I just want I think people just need to be like if you're upfront, but then consistent with that is way more valuable than whatever authenticity even means. And so I think we just like to throw that term around. Um, but yeah, I think no one wants to work with someone that's like disingenuous or you don't really know. Okay, I mean Paul's saying that, but I don't know what he actually means or what he's going to do. Like it's just follow through. Like you do what you say you're going to do. That's one of our. So we made core values for same page. Like we've got in our top one, the first one that we wrote down before we even had a client was we do what we say we're going to do. Um, and that's to me just there's two parts of that. One is like we're very conscious of anything we say. So if I'm on a call with somebody and I'm like, I'll do that tomorrow, I've caught myself being like, actually, that's going to take me 3 days. Like the first part of do what you say you're going to do is like make sure you don't overpromise, but then we just relentlessly follow through. Um, I think that is a currency if it is in short supply. So that's
Mm-hmm.
it's aspirational sometimes for us, but that's a goal.
Yeah, it's because what do you find when it's that classic thing of like people over promising and then under delivering? Like, why do you think that is? And from what you said, it sounds like that's very common now.
I, it feels common to me. I do it. Like we just get caught up. There's many reasons, right? Like you overestimate your bandwidth and your capability. Um, it's just we don't as humans we don't like saying no. Like there's that's why that's one of these negotiation tactics you hear. Like rather than ask you for something, you say you know would it be crazy if would it be crazy if you gave me this? Like it's like quicker negotiation to say no. But I think we just do that because we we're bad judges of what we can actually pull off and what we can do, and then um, while we don't actually follow through, I think we are we're bad judges of what our future self can handle, and so we think it's just we there's this concept of your future self. It feels like a different person. So when I commit to doing something like this podcast, I'm not really actually committing me to do it. I'm committing future Matt in 2 weeks to do it. And I'm like, I'm sure Matt will want to do that in 2 weeks. And in this case, I really did. But a lot of things that I say yes to, I get there and I'm like, ugh, why did I say yes to this? And that's why I don't know who came up with this, but there's this kind of rule of thumb of when you're deciding if you should do something or not, it doesn't matter when it is. Would you do it if it was right now or tomorrow? Because it's just harder for us to really think about our future self as the same person. Um, so I don't know who came up with that, but it's like if you ask me, do you want to do something or can you do something? It's like, would I do it right now or tomorrow? And even if it's a month away, that's what I based my answer on. So I think that's what it is. It's just like we're not good at, that concept is hard.
Yeah. I like that mental model a lot because it's a way to frame like, yeah, would I do that now? Okay, yes, then I'm going to say yes. But also, if you're thinking, am I trying to people please or just be nice? And then
Yeah.
because then if it comes to it and I don't do it, well, then suddenly I've broken my promise
This is
as
why,
opposed to, yeah.
yeah, this is the Tim Urban TED talk on procrastination is incredible because he talks about, and he's hilarious anyway, but he's like, te, you know, Ted reached out to him to do a TED talk, and he's like, "Sounds great. That's for future Ted to worry about. Like, good luck, man." Like, and so each month he just kept procrastinating on this talk about procrastination, which is hilarious. But in his mind, he's just like, I mean, current self is going to go play video games, or whatever. Like, future self can worry about that. That's why. Have you heard of this? I don't know who did it. Some company that was trying to get people to invest more in their 401k. They took a picture of your face on the computer and then they aged it immediately to see what you would look like when you're 70, and people will invest more because they're like, oh, that is me. Like, it's not this abstract thing of like putting money aside for somebody I don't know in 70 when they're 70. We're just bad at thinking about the future, but when you see a picture of yourself as old, you're like, oh my god, that's me. Like, I should save money for that person. um, I don't know
Yeah,
who did that. Somebody did
that's
that,
an
but
interesting concept. And actually, what you were saying of like, oh,
uh,
that's future whoever's problem. But I think like directly from The Simpsons, Homer Simpson was like, that's future Homer's issue now.
I love, yeah,
Um,
exactly. That's exactly what we do, and that's human nature.
and because I think the logical fallacy is like, oh, well, I'll still feel like doing it then, and like anything, you got to be able to live with the paradox that things are equally true and equally false, and knowing when it is. So it's like, yeah, in some ways, trust your gut, trust your instincts, whatever. But in a lot of ways, your gut is wrong.
Oh
And
yeah,
so if you're only thinking, well, I don't feel like doing it, so I shouldn't do it because it's wrong. It's a wrong decision. No, you just don't, you feel like shit for a lot of other reasons. You should still do it.
yeah.
And that's why it's tough because when you agree to do it, you had all that energy around it. Oh, yeah, this could be exciting. Well, then next week, 2 weeks later, you're like, what?
Yeah.
You're just not as hyped up for it. And so that's why it's easy to, you make an excuse, and that excuse is completely valid. It's not the right thing to do, but you're like, well, I didn't feel like it. It didn't seem right to me at the time.
Well, this
Um,
is you're familiar with Derek Sivers' like hell yes or no framework,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but so people misuse that. I heard him on a podcast recently about this, and he's like, look, yeah, I mean, I that's what I use for decisions, but like pay my taxes. I mean, that's not a hell yes, but I'm going to pay my taxes. Like, people took that thing and ran with it, and what he meant was like that is a framework for making big choices when you can say no. But like, I'm leading a training. I won't work on it tomorrow, a little bit over this weekend. I'll be like cramming on it on Monday night. So tomorrow on a Friday, is that like a hell yes for me? Like, probably not, but like, I'm gonna try to do it. I mean, I don't always, just because I understand this concept does not mean I always live up to this. Like, there's still a very good chance I'll be cramming on Monday night for this, but I'm gonna try to reward future Matt and do some of that tomorrow. So anyway, I think people have misstated what he was saying there.
Yeah. Well, I've had this mantra that I've had to carefully word because the first time I worded it, it contradicted itself. The original version was there is no universal mental model. Well, but by saying that, that becomes a universal mental model. So I'm like, there's probably not, and there's a great likelihood that there is not a universal mental model that works every time. And there's some scientific terminology for like if a theory can get disproven at even just one time, then it is not a law of nature. And so most even like law like what we consider laws of science aren't equal. So it's like, yeah, why like for the hell yes or it's a no, yeah, that's not going to apply to every situation, but people are like seeking certainty and seeking absolutes, and because it's easier.
Yeah.
But knowing like, okay, in this situation, the hell yes model is going to work, and I'm going to apply it. In this situation, like my taxes, like going to the gym at 5 a.m. kind of sucks. It feels great later, but there's
Right.
nothing fun about waking up early. So
Right. That
when is
that's a
that going to be a
future
hell yeah?
self.
Yeah, that's for
Yeah.
me when I
I
wake
I
up.
actually I actually like your first version of that. It's kind of funny. Like there is no universal mental model. It reminds me of the like don't believe everything you read on the internet. Abraham Lincoln or whatever. Like it's like I don't know. There's some
Oh,
cyclical. There's there's some good humor hidden in that one, Paul. I don't know. You might want to stick with the original, but I get the point.
yeah, no, I like
That's good.
that. It's the revise is like me getting like self-conscious about it, but actually as a conversation starter, yeah, I'll stick with the first one and be like, now let's discuss because that's really what I want to do. Like I enjoy those kind of conversations. I mean, that's really why this whole podcast
I
exists.
love it.
So
Yeah, I
um
love it.
and I mean for a lot of reasons. So I know we're a little bit
Yeah.
over time. Anything you want to wrap with? Like, where do you see 2021 taking? Same page? Anything you're worried about, excited about?
I'm like I just am. I told someone recently, like, I don't know what this is or what it's going to be, and I'm just kind of at peace with that. Like, I'm going to give this my all for a while, and um, I'm thinking in like 3 month births right now. So I'm excited, but I'm not trying to predict the future. So we're just going to keep pushing and see what happens.
Dude, I'm looking forward to seeing what you do. So,
I appreciate it.
really
Yeah,
appreciate you hopping on today.
yeah,
Always
man.
great catching up. Um,
It's great to see you. Let's do it again soon.
Absolutely. Last question:
Yeah.
did that work out with Brooke with the mastermind? Did they get in touch?
Not yet. No, I can't remember. Did you copy me on an email or something? I can't. This is ringing a bell, but I haven't heard from them yet.
Okay, I'll look through because it would be like, and they may be too like a lot of these folks may be too small. I
Yeah.
don't know if you, but it's like agency owners who have little idea how to manage employees, and it's often a thing of like, I don't know how to like attract talent, I don't know how to keep talent, or I have all this issue, and
Yeah.
I've gotten a crap load of business from this
I remember
mastermind
this
group.
now. Yeah,
Yeah,
I emailed her. I'll check in again, and if I haven't heard back from her, but I mean that's okay. Like that happens.
yeah.
No, I appreciate the intro, but
No, I think
yeah,
it's a stellar, beyond stellar group of people who like 100% need help,
yeah.
and they bring it. They bring in all kind Cameron Harold.
Mm-mm.
He has this book that I've got, Double Double. She's had some like big, like more
Big folks.
recognizable people,
Yeah.
in addition to just people who are experts in specific niches. So I
No,
think
that'd
it'd
be
be good.
cool. I'll reach out again. Uh,